When planning this last mechanical head, the first thing we did, as with the other mechanical heads, was fill out one of our design sheets. On the sheet we listed all the features that we wanted this mechanical head to have. We decided to go all out on this last mechanical head and make eyes that moved in any direction, eyelids that blinked, eyebrows that moved up and down, a jaw that opened and closed, upper lips that moved up and down, a lower lip that moved up and down, and a neck that would pivot in any direction. We decided to control all these movements by cables except for the neck joint. For that we decided to use a handle similar to the one we used in the first mechanical head. Now for the base we decided to construct an aluminum bar stock frame. Now since a mechanical head like this requires so many hours to build and assemble, we decided to not actually construct it for you in front of the camera. Instead, we decided to show you the mechanical head already constructed and explain one by one how we built each feature. We think that after seeing the mechanical head in this way, that you'll be able to understand clearly how it was constructed. This is the head. As you can see, it's a little more complicated than the others, but it's still fairly simple to build. It just requires a little more time. Of course, the eyes need to be finished, teeth need to be added, and then a skin stretched over the mechanics. As you can see, the neck pivots in any direction. The jaw movement and facial expressions are operated with this controller. The eyes are operated by simply pulling on these cables. Here are the various mechanical movements. We have left and right eye movement, up and down eye movement, the jaw, the lower lip that works independently from the jaw, one eyelid, the other eyelid, one upper lip, the other upper lip, one eyebrow, and the other eyebrow. To begin with, we had to decide what type of eye mechanism to use. We chose to use an internal mounted eye mechanism like this, made out of a roll-on ball, and we decided to mount it using a piece of bent toilet lift rod attached to the socket. We decided to leave the eyes off till the very end so that we didn't hurt them during construction. Next, we bent a piece of bar stock using the methods that we showed you earlier in the video, and we attached the eye sockets to that piece of bar stock using small bolts. We knew that we would have a lot of activity going on above the eyes with the movable eyebrows and movable eyelids, so we bent a second piece of bar stock exactly the same as the first, and we mounted it to the lower piece of bar stock using shorter pieces of bar stock on the side. This will give us a frame to work with when mounting our movable eyebrows and our movable eyelids. We created a pivot point and a mount for the eyelid wire by bending small pieces of wire with a loop at each end. We mounted these wires at the sides of the eyes by connecting one of the loops to the upper frame using small bolts. The other loop we made sure was in line with the center line of the eye. The two eyelid support wires on the insides of the eye were connected to the upper frame using two thumb screws. The thumb screws were drilled out to hold the cable that will activate the eyelid movement. The eyelid wires were then weaved through the eyelid support wires at the sides of the eye and connected to the lower frame using 2 springs. These springs will keep the eyelids in the open position. The eyebrows were made by attaching a short piece of aluminum bar stock to the end of a piece of threaded rod. The threaded rod passes through the upper frame and a support that will allow it to pivot. A piece of bent wire was attached to the other end of the threaded rod and connected to the other side of the frame using a spring. This spring will keep the eyebrow in the up position. To move the eyebrows, we connected cables to the lower frame using thumb screws that were drilled out to hold the cables. Knowing that something would be needed to attach the upper teeth to, we bent a piece of semicircular bar stock and connected it to the lower frame using small bolts. .1024 bolts were used as a pivot to mount the upper lip bars to the upper jaw. The cable that will move the upper lips was connected to the upper frame using a thumb screw, and a spring will keep the upper lip in the down position. A piece of semicircular bent bar stock was used for the lower jaw. It was connected to the lower frame using 2 short pieces of bar stock. A piece of semicircular bent bar stock was also used for the lower lip, and it was connected to the lower jaw with a piece of .1024 threaded rod that will allow it to pivot. To move the jaw, a piece of .1024 threaded rod was connected to the jaw on the opposite side of the pivot point. Connected to this threaded rod was a piece of bar stock, and mounted in the bar stock was a cable casing. The cable that runs through the casing is mounted to another piece of threaded rod on the lower portion of the frame. As you can see, lower lip movement is achieved the same way that lower jaw movement is achieved, except the cables are mounted in opposite directions. A spring running from the lower lip to the lower jaw keeps the lower lip in the up position. The head was connected to a piece of PVC pipe using 2 pieces of .1024 threaded rod. The PVC pipe passes through a wiffle ball, and the wiffle ball is seated in a large PVC fitting that allows it to pivot. The PVC fitting was connected to 2 pieces of aluminum angle, and the angle was secured to a wooden base. Now that was a fairly quick description of how we built the mechanics for this head. So making use of the old phrase that a picture is worth 1,000 words, for the next couple of minutes we're going to show you various close-up shots of the mechanics being moved. That way, if you didn't quite understand our description of how the mechanics were built, hopefully after seeing these close-up pictures you'll be able to understand. Now for some of the shots we've removed the eye sockets so that you can get a better look at the eyelid mechanisms. We're also going to show you close-ups of the controller so that you can build one of your own. I hope those close-ups helped you to better understand how we built this head, and I also hope they help you in building a head like this of your own. As you can see, by using the techniques we learned in our building blocks segment and materials that you can get at your local hardware store, a head like this can be very easy to build. This whole head only cost about $35 to put together, and that's pretty inexpensive considering the effects you can get with it.